Hi everyone, thank you for attending our webinar today. We're going to give a couple of minutes for any late attendees, so please hold on and the webinar will start shortly. Hi again everyone, and welcome to our webinar on Maximise Your Salesforce ROI with Advanced Test Automation. Next slide please. I'll start with a quick introduction. My name's Faz Ahmed and I've been with Prolifics Testing for 7 years now, but I've been within the testing services sector for over 20 years. I'm the go-to-market owner for packaged software testing within Prolifics. So I look after our clients for Salesforce, as well as SAP, Oracle and Workday, and as well as other leading vendors. A bit of general housekeeping. We've muted the webinar today, but please feel free to enter any questions into the chat box and we'll try and answer them at the end of the session. Next slide, please. We hope you'll enjoy the session we've pulled together for you. In terms of agenda, I'll start by giving a short introduction to Prolifics testing and our experience with Salesforce. I'll also talk through some of the challenges of using open source for Salesforce test automation. I'll then hand over to Bernard from our partner Tricentis, who will go through Testim, a code-free AI-driven test automation platform that can deliver significant ROI for Salesforce testing. There'll be a demo of the tool and time at the end for answering any questions, so please do type any questions as we go along to the chat box. Next slide, please. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Prolifics, we're a Salesforce and MuleSoft partner. We help organizations on their journey to the cloud. And once there, we help them integrate their cloud platforms with downstream systems with cloud-based APIs. We can help organizations leverage data trapped in their operational systems through AI-based data and analytics. And finally, we have the quality engineering division, which is where I'm from. In terms of the testing practice, size and scale, we've got over 25 years experience and 700 dedicated testers in the UK, US and offshore in India. And if you were to ask me what makes Prolifics testing different to other companies out there, I'd have to say it's our focus on innovation, and not for its own sake, but to help our clients to test smarter, faster and less cost. Next slide, please. Brilliant. As a Salesforce partner, we've got over 20 years experience with Salesforce. Our team have delivered over 1,000 projects, which includes 225 implementations. Our experience spans across Salesforce sales, service and marketing cloud. And within the testing team, we've got over 140 Salesforce testers. We often get involved in test automation projects as clients need a fast and cost-effective way to test changes on their Salesforce platform. Our experience ranges from using open source tools through to some of the new AI-enabled code-free test automation platforms, such as Tricentis Testing. On this slide, I've listed down some of our recent Salesforce testing clients, and through this experience, our team have been able to identify some of the specific challenges around Salesforce test automation, which I'd like to share with you. Next slide, please. So through our experience of developing thousands of automated tests for Salesforce, we've learned that using open source tools doesn't necessarily give the greatest ROI. Issues our team have encountered include coded open source tools that require more effort and therefore added costs for script development as well as ongoing maintenance. Certain technical issues for Salesforce Lightning, such as objects failing to be recognized due to dynamic pages, leads to coded tests being fragile and regularly breaking. Also, there aren't any code-free or self-healing features available in many of the open source tools available at the moment. And finally, with open source tools, you need people with some coding experience. So test automation ends up remaining with a handful of test automation engineers rather than the broader team. These are just some of the reasons why we adopted Tricentis testing for Salesforce test automation. Bernard is up next to talk to you about their code-free AI-driven tool. Over to you, Bernard. No,
Can you unmute?
we can hear you now.
Okay, you can hear me now? Okay, perfect. So thank you, Fast, for the opportunity to share this with you in this webinar. And just to give a brief introduction, if you have heard the name Tricentis, then you probably know that we have a number of products in our portfolio. We have two test automation products. One of them is called Testim, and today we're going to be looking at Tricentis Testim for Salesforce, which is really the box highlighted here in green. It builds and extends the Testim platform, which has been created to allow a cloud-based, a cloud-native test automation solution specifically for web applications and mobile testing. So it extends that capability. Now, if you know us, or if you have heard about us, or if you're going to look at our website, we have two products. One is called Testim, as we've just seen, and the other one is called Tosca. Now, both can deliver Salesforce test automation, but they have a slightly different audience. So Testim is very specialized, as we will shortly see, for web applications, one of which is obviously Salesforce. You can do UI testing, API testing, and mobile testing, whereas Tosca covers this as well, and many more other things. That you generally see in an environment. So the audience is slightly different. Now, focusing on Testim, as Faz already mentioned, it's a SaaS platform, so it's only available as SaaS. It is powered by AI, so it has a number of AI-based tools to help you to create stable UI test automation, where with the use of pre-built steps, you can do faster test authoring. With our AI self-healing capability and smart locators, you have to do less maintenance, and therefore you can save quite a lot of time in a sprint and can do in-sprint UI testing. You can extend and introduce more flexibility by adding some code. That is JavaScript code, so it's relatively easy to do. And we also have an assistant that helps you to create this automatically, specific for the work with Testim. And so you're not stuck with what you have. And with the self-healing, which is basically something you can turn off because sometimes you do not want to do that. But as you execute tests and Testim recognizes that some of the elements are no longer 100% found, or the probability of finding them is no longer 100%, um, it will automatically improve this and therefore helping you without doing anything to um, have stable test automation. And with test automation, there's always a challenge. How do I manage it? So there's a number of things which we're going to have a look at as well that help you to manage your test automation activities. We call this test ops, and you will see this in action shortly. With any solution, it needs to integrate into your existing environment or your planned target operating model. So you can see here we have a number of integrations for various purposes that help you to achieve your test automation and integrate it into your DevOps tool chain. Now, focusing on the Salesforce part. So we used to have a year ago a separate solution called Tricentis Test Automation for Salesforce. So you can see this somewhat still reflected in parts of the product, but this is now merged with Testim, so it becomes an extension to this solution, and it provides a number of additional features with regards to Salesforce. So without going into much detail here, you can see this in action now. So before I start the demo, maybe a bit about myself. So I'm Bernard Clem. I am an enterprise solution architect at Tricentis and working closely with partners like Prolific. So we've done a lot of work in the past together, based in the UK. And now we come to the solution itself. So this is Testim for Salesforce, and this is the test ops dashboard. So there's roughly three things I'm going to do now. So the first one is when you start off with testing, you need to look at which environments you want to test in. So we'll have a look at some features there. Then we're going to create one or more tests. Then we're going to go into how does it work with running them and managing them and a few other things around execution and reporting. So this is the test ops dashboard. Basically, you can see what has been run recently, and you can see the number of tests you currently have and in what status they are. We come to this as we go through. But first of all, when you start off with Salesforce testing, one of the key things is you can have as many Salesforce environments as you want, and you probably have quite a few. So how do you keep track of who is using what? So the first part is basically you can define a Salesforce, one or more Salesforce environments. So you can see here, I've got a whole list of environments. But if we focus on the Bernard one, so I've given it a name, Bernard, a URL. So that's absolutely fine. And a branch. So the branch name can be obviously different to the environment name, but it's associated to a certain branch. That's going to be important, and I will show you in a second why. So I've got the URL to environment and a branch within Testim. Now the second one is something called personas. So here you can define different personas. So generally roles within your Salesforce environment. And for each persona per the environment, you can see at the top, each column is a different environment. You can define the actual user ID and password or multi-factor authentication for that user that then reflects the profile. So you're not testing on specific users, you're testing on specific profiles. So should the user change, you can just change the user. If you're going to add profiles, it's easy to do. So once you've got environments and personas, you can actually start creating a test. So I'm going to show you how to do this. Now, before we start doing this, you can see at the top here, we've got the branching. So you can create branches, you can merge them back, you can synchronize branches with your, say, different repositories like GitHub repositories. The key thing is it just synchronizes the branches. There's no code that is being committed to any outside version control system. Here we have a test case. Each test step is represented as a tile. So the first tile is basically log into Salesforce, which you've got here. If you need to change that, you can do this here. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you will always see the properties. Now, there are two things that are initially of importance. So the first one is the status of the test case. So we have draft, evaluating, active, quarantine. I'll come to this later, but draft is basically we're just testing, want to create a test. It's not in production, so we're in development. So in order to do some automation, and we're going to use a simple example, creating an account, just to show you the principles behind that. The first one is we can add a test step. So if we click on the button here, there are a number of pre-built test steps. So Salesforce for specific one, but also generally for web automation, and some of them are AI powered, predefined steps that allow you to easily put a test together. So what are we going to do is we're going to log into Salesforce using a persona. So the personas that are available are basically depending on my branch. The branch points to a certain environment. We've defined a list of personas for it. So I have the choice of two. So I can do, I choose the burner profile. Now, the next step is, so we want to log in and we want to launch an app. Now, generally, the apps that are available depend on the user permissions. Now, the list of apps here is dependent on the user that I have in my Bernard profile. So depending what this user sees, I can select the object. So whatever detailed objects are displayed on the right-hand side is specific to that user permission. It's built basically at runtime when I create my test. So I want to start the sales operation. Then I have more operations in terms of records. So I can create a sales. And here I want to create an account and I give it a name. So it automatically retrieves all the fields that are available. I can now input something, I can verify something, I can store values, I can ignore them, reset them. In my case, I want to input and I want to say, call it demo1. This is my account name. That's all I need to create an account. So then I want to do something else. I want to validate that the account created actually has the name of demo1. So I can add this. I can also add API operations like executing Apex or general REST API operations. So I can do UI and API testing, including executing Apex and DML queries and so forth. So going back to my record operations or common operations, because once I've validated my account, I want to log out. So I've basically created a UI test for Salesforce without touching the UI. When I run this test, I can set a breakpoint here. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this demo 1, 2, 3 and click save. So it's saved and I can run it without saving, but it's just nicer if it has been saved. So I can just run this test, and if as I go through running the test, you can see the test step here on the right-hand side and the replay on the left-hand side. So it will now use my profile to log in. It now launches the sales app. It will now create an account. So you see, I've created a test without using the UI. It will now create this demo account, and it will verify that my account that I've just created actually has the demo one account name. So the validation and the validation you can see here is in green. So whatever validation is then being highlighted. Now, coming back to my Salesforce application. So with our predefined steps, that's the most commonly used steps. So this is available through the Salesforce API. There's no secret around that. That's also how the Tosca Salesforce scanner works. We just scan it bit by bit here at create time. Now, things like creating a new node, that's not included in that. But how can you use this as part of your automation? So I can now start recording, and I can see here the recorder. It tells me I'm recording Salesforce, and I can also use it to move around, just in case it's basically in the way of an object. And I can now create my node, for example, and you can see the events, the number of events. 7 now is being recorded. I say my node, and in the body, I'll also do my node. I can now add verifications, whatever I want to do, to it as well. And so I've created some steps, and they have just been added. There's also a resizing, which I can delete, like any step that I don't want, I can delete. And this is now my completed test case. So I can now run this from the beginning, and it will log into Salesforce. Maybe I'll drag this again over here. And you can see then that step by step. So it just also handles things like I haven't logged out, so I'm already authorized. It handles things like this automatically, so no complex logic that I need to implement. It just carries on, and you can now see I've created my node and click save. So now I've reached the breakpoint, and I can toggle that and then step over and logging out. So this is how you create a test case in for Salesforce, in testing for Salesforce. So we now done a test case. So there's another aspect to a test case, and one is I've done a static one here. So I want to use some test data. So I go back to my first screen. I can now scroll down. I have a button here called test data. There's no test data in there, so we can upload a CSV file. You can also run Node.js command line test steps. So if you wanted to connect to a remote database, which you've got somewhere on the cloud, you can do that as well. In this case, I've got some test data local. It's now using the term account, Michael. So if I go back to my test and go into create account, so instead of using the text demo, I can use account. All I have to do it switch from text to JavaScript, so it becomes a variable. But and I can do the same here. I can now change it to account, but actually I can just leave it at demo one, and I'm just going to run this one more time, and then you can see that I am actually using the variable to create the account. But then when I check it, I am using the demo one step. And once we've run this test, we then look more into how can we optimize what we're doing before we get into things like test plans and so forth. There we are. There is your demo one is not defined. Sorry, I should have done this as as a text and run this again. Yes. So you can also see it's relatively straightforward, the error messages. Um, and this is just the final run through. And then we also have a look at how we can have the solution help us to create our initial sets of tests. So provided I have not done any other um, errors, that was the wrong test step anyhow, then it's okay. So I didn't use the variable, and there we are. Okay, but you can use variables to create dynamic or to create um, test cases that use specific test data. So now I've done that and the test was run. So if I now say I want to reuse the launch app account, validate account, I can basically mark that and create a group, and that group is basically like a function. I can call this my account, and then it is available um, in my repository as a function, my account. I can also do um, things like repetitions and so forth with it. So it's relatively easy there to do also um, a check when to run it. So if a certain element on the screen exists, run it, otherwise don't. So you don't need to write if then else. The other important part is um, testing works a lot on the basis of labels. So if I now um, save it and add a label, I always forget doing that. So I can, for example, use an existing label or create new labels. Now I've added the label Bernard. So where is this important? Now this is important when we look at the test status. So a test in draft um, is basically a test that, if included in a test plan that can be executed, will not be run at all. If the status is on evaluating, then it will be run, and if it fails, it will not fail the test plan. If it's active and it fails, it will fail the test plan. So your pipeline, if you use a pipeline, will be red. If you have a test in quarantine, if it's part of a test plan, it will not be executed either. So, what does this mean? So, if we look at how we can, first of all, organize our tests, our tests are basically in the test library. In the test library, you can have folders like Bernard, and if I click on that, then we get into a folder called Bernard. So you can see here there's some Apex examples and API examples, which we could have a look at. Or you can have individual tests. So you can have as many folders and subfolders and tests. Now, if you look at the demo 1 to 3 that I've just done, you can see here it's got a label Bernard, and you can also see the status of draft. And if we go into Bernard and the test ops part, then you can also see a number of test cases here that have one or more labels, yeah, certain status, and also you can see the test runs on a high level. The last few test runs, for example, here it's always failed. Here a couple of passes, a couple of fails. So you can get a kind of a view in terms of when were the tests last executed with what status. So it's really single page view um, and really excellent. Now, what you can also do is you can create a test suite. A test suite, like Bernard, is basically a collection of tests. So all you say is edit suite, add some tests to that, and then they will always be in that suite. Sorry. Now, the other important part is a test plan. Now, a test plan is really important. So if I look at Bernard, so a test plan generally contains information about what you want to run. you can run some tests before that, and after that, they're not really recorded as test results for the test plan. And then you have a test list. So what you can do is you can either or add a test suite, or you can add tests by label. And that is very important because if I am just saying here, right, my burner test plan runs all the tests with Bernard, I don't need to worry about, putting tests in there. All I need to worry about is putting a label onto my test called Bernard, like I did before. And then next time this test suite or this test plan is executed, it will automatically run this test. So don't need to worry about have I got all the tests that are created in my test plan? Did I move them in? As long as I've labeled them, then they will be run. So with multiple labels, they can also be associated to multiple test plans. And then I can also choose where to run them. So we've got our own test grid. You can also create your uh, local test grid, which is basically a Selenium compatible test grid if you want to run applications that are not accessible externally. Otherwise, you can use the cloud-based execution and save it. So in obviously with Salesforce, that is the standard way of doing that. So once you've done that, you can go into into the actual runs. So you can see here, I've got some runs, some pass and fails. Um, in my example 3 that failed, I've got example 2 passed and example 1 passed as the last time. So if I want to drill down in terms of what I've run, so you can see within my execution, I've run 6 tests. And there was basically one test name active fail. So basically, this comes back to the status or statey that I've showed earlier that a test case has. So if you have an active test case in a test plan and you run it and it fails, the whole test plan will fail. Here we have an evaluate, and that failure is actually ignored. So it shows you that. Um, you can see that information as well in terms of the um, test runs. So that's individual test runs. A run is basically a test case execution. The other thing you can do is you can schedule runs to happen. In my test result example, so this would be a schedule that runs um, everything that has basically um, linked to a test plan example, and then within the test plan you can have labels in there, for example. You can specify the days. The grid comes from the test plan, the branch again, but also the other part is you can run tests in parallel by increasing this number here. And you can also specify the number of retries and label the test results. But the number of retries is basically is quite important when we come to our test ops dashboard. So in here, you can see, okay, the latest runs. You can filter them, pass and fail. There's various filters in terms of runs. You can also just filter on the tests assigned to you, so you can see how the tests that are assigned to you as a developer, or let's call it as a test engineer, um, if they are assigned to you, you can kind of check out how they're doing. Now, the other part, which is very important, is you can see how many tests you have per status. Now, why is this important? Because it helps you to prioritize work. So, if you, for example, are in the situation where you need to have your pipeline clean. So you integrate testing for Salesforce into your CI/CD pipeline. You run it, that executes the test plan. The test plan has a test in there that fails. Now you know by checking manually that the application is fine, the test is wrong. You don't have the time to modify the test to make it right. You want to release, you can only release the pipeline is green. Now, what you can do is you can just set the status of the test to quarantine. It will then show up here. It will not be executed, um, but it will still be part of the test plan. So all you need to do is then basically click on quarantine. You can see the test, and then you can update this. And once you are happy with the test, you set the status back to either evaluating or active, and then you know next time the test plan or any test plan that uses this test case is executed, it will be run again. So no commenting out and forgetting about it somewhere in the pipeline. It's all nice and clear. So go back. There's one status which is called flaky that we can't set the test case to by ourselves. So this flakiness is done by the system. And what does this mean? You saw you could retry um, if a test case is failed. So a retry of at least once means if the test case fails during execution, test team tries to run this test again if you specified it. And if that test case then passes, obviously your overall test plan will pass, but then the test case gets the status of flaky because without the environment having changed, it must be something to do with the test. So that's the secondary one to look at. First quarantine test, then flaky test, and then obviously you look at your tests that are evaluating, see how they're going, and the ones that you have in draft. So if I look at the evaluating ones, I can see, okay, I maybe need a bit more work on the top um, uh, three, right? Because they seem to have some failures in there. The delete accounts works relatively stable now over the past couple of runs, and the evaluate fail obviously fails all the time. So that's something that is completely wrong. But this is also then how you can prioritize what you want to do. Coming back to my test cases, one of the things that sometimes is a bit hard is actually to get started. So we have here the AI test creator. So depending on the profile you're using, you can have um, the AI creator create some samples tests specifically for your Salesforce environment. So if yours differs, which it 99% will do compared to mine, then it will take this into account. So here we have, for example, the create account test case, and you can see here it does pretty much what I've just shown, but it also deletes the account. Now, if you look at create account on the right-hand side, you can see there's a lot more values and drop-down boxes used than I did, but it's all automatically created, so it gives you a start you can work with. So that's around the test list. Now coming back to my settings, and one of the key things is always integrations. I mentioned GitHub and Bitbucket, so you can connect to GitHub and then synchronize within a repository the branch names. So that means if somebody creates a branch in GitHub, it is also created in here, and then you can develop your tests against this branch. If then in GitHub the branch is merged back to main or master or trunk, then the same happens um, with the branch in here. So it's automatically merged back. So it keeps it in sync. Now, we have various integrations that are Salesforce specific. Gearset and Cobado are the two we have here. If there's a specific integration generally that you want to have, and it's always worth discussing with us, we may have that already in work, or it may be something we can accommodate of doing so. We also have a number of different bug trackers. And obviously, from a test management perspective, we have our own products with Qtest and Tricentis Test Management, which is basically the Jira plugin, but also popular competitors like X-Ray and TestRail. Integrations, again, if you are keen on a particular integration, please talk to us before making a decision. And that is primarily the solution as it is. And just to check, are there any questions?
Oh, sorry, Bernard, you're breaking up there a bit, but I've actually got a few questions which I think the audience members might be interested in. Can you let me know, testing, is it able to automate other applications outside of Salesforce?
Web applications, yes. Web and mobile.
It is. And testing, is it a totally cloud-based solution rather than on-prem?
Yes. So it's a cloud-based solution. The only thing you need is you need to have Chrome and a plugin into Chrome to create a test automation. Running it, you can do on any browser, but to create the automated tests, you need to have Chrome and the plugin. Everything else can be, on cloud. You can also have, as I've mentioned it before, a grid installed locally, which is basically a Selenium compatible grid, and you can then run the tests on there. So that works as well.
Okay. If there's anyone in the audience that isn't quite ready to commit to buying testing, but they'd like a way to try it first, is there an offer to be able to do a free trial on testing?
Yes, there is. If you go to our website, tricentis.com,
Mm-hmm.
and if you look at products, then you will find Testim here, and you can just basically get started for free, and then you get a 14-day trial. That's for Testim as well as Testim for Salesforce. It's the same kind of process. You can you can try it for free for 14 days. It's very simple to sign up for that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Bernard, and thank you very much for that demo. Hopefully the audience members can see just how easy it is to automate Salesforce using testing. And I think that's it for our session today. I hope you found it useful, and please do check out Prolific Testing's LinkedIn page for our next webinar. And if you've got any questions on anything that you've seen, please don't hesitate to drop me a line. So thank you very much for joining, and bye for now.